there's a degree that people are going to do their own thing. We do our own thing. So there's a level where she's not going to listen to you, and she's whatever. And I know my father, who goes to a cardiologist, and for 15 or more years he's got heart stents. You know, these things they put in to open up arteries. I don't know, he's had them for longer than 15 years, okay? So he modified his diet 15 years ago, and he exercises a little bit now. Great, for many years. I'm sure it's why he's still alive, okay? Now he's 88. Can you imagine? He's 88 years old, and he's eating all the foods the cardiologist told him not to eat 15 years ago. He's all back on the foods, and I noticed. So a few months ago we were there, and I said, Dad, you know, he wanted dessert, and I said, you've had ice cream every night this week for dessert. I said, you're not supposed to have ice cream at all. Right? I've tried to, you know, slowly I make nice food for him when he's there and healthy food. And he looked at me and he said, all of a sudden he looked at me and he said, I'm 88. Like, you know, I realized at 88, if he wants to have ice cream, why can't he have ice cream? Like, I mean, it might bring his death sooner, but he's 88 years old, you know? So there's a level where I let go and think, I am concerned, you know, he has good doctors, we go to the doctors, and there's only so much I can do. And one day he's going to die. And it's going to be hard, but that's the reality. So do you know what I mean? If you spend a little time with your mind to say, what can I do? And then what you can do is sometimes I let go of all those things, the fears and the worry, and I just have nice quality time with him. You know, I just get into what does he like to do? Let's do this, let's have an outing, let's enjoy. Let's just have a nice dinner without me concerned about that has too much fat and that's, you know, and it changes and it's fun and then it's much nicer. So again, there's times where I push a little and say, no, we're not going to eat that tonight, or don't have pizza, have this. And then there's times, and then I just get into being with him, and it can be quite pleasant, and there's only so much you can do. So it also alleviates my mind into having the constant, you need to do this, you need to be like this, you need to be this kind of person. Okay, sometimes, how many of you accept people that you care about and love, and how many find you're a little bit at war because there's certain things you're not accepting about them? Right, have you noticed? I mean, and sometimes they're mirroring things we're not accepting in ourselves, right? Okay, they mirror what we don't accept in ourselves, and then we get into a tangle with them over that. Okay, so more and more with my father, you know, he's a lot like, I'm a lot like him, I should say. So there's things that I want to change in myself, and then I see it in him, and then I'll say, like, you know what you need to do? And he'll be like, what? Don't tell me what I need to do, right? And then I realize, like, oh yeah, I don't need to tell him what he needs to do. You know, that's me talking to me. But through my meditation, I've been a little bit more observant of that process, and then gentler with myself, able to accept those things in myself that aren't perfect, that I'm working on. I'm a work in progress, as we all are. It's okay. So then if I'm gentler, then I'm gentler out there with everybody. Lamiash used to say that, if you be gentle with yourself, then you'll be gentle with all others. So that's kind of where that dance with attachment starts. So does that help with your fear? A little bit. It's interesting to look at it, you know, and look at what I'm trying to control certain things about my dad. And you also have don't you have certain ways you want things done? People do things differently than you do, whether it's at work, in your home, in your family life, you know, with your friends. So I just noticed a few things, and I'm just using my father as an example, where he's helping with my mail at home. Either a bill to be paid, or most of it's done online, it's very easy, I do it myself, but occasionally something comes in, right? And then I had this system to make it easier for him. Don't worry, just put it in the pile. And later I'll go through it, don't worry, because I'm gone from the house for about 6 months. I said, don't worry, you know. But he took care of it in such an efficient way. And suddenly I was like, you know, that's not okay. And he said, why? It's done. And then I realized, no, it was just my way of doing it. he actually did a really good thing. It's done now. So why am I fighting with him? Because it had to be done my way? Because, because I wanted control. I had to control how, why? Why? You lose sight of being happy. So these are different levels of attachment we get into with people. And again, please analyze the reality. What's appearing to me? How am I seeing it, for one, experiencing it, interrelating with it? Is it accurate? Okay, you do have a valid perspective from your view. You do have a valid perspective. Is it the whole picture? Is it the whole picture? Your perspective? No, right? So that's why, isn't it interesting how you know somebody that you really like and somebody else doesn't like them? There's different perspectives to things. Anybody have trouble with somebody at work or their boss?
Everybody.
Right? Right? So you might have a little bit trouble with this person. Are there people that like them? Isn't that interesting when you find somebody has a positive take on what this negative thing that just happened to you? There's always another way of seeing things. Yeah. So for me, I find it really kind of settles down, subdues attachment at times. I have a perspective, this is what I'm seeing, this is what's presented to me right now. I'm not happy with this. I'm either overly grasping onto it or not wanting it to be in my vein, but other people are having different experience. How interesting, right? So for me, it loosens up, it adds a little space to things. There's another dimension of possibilities for me. Other attachment issues coming up for people that we're not touching on? Other
Attachment
people?
to your ideas.
Attachment to your ideas. Similar, right? Attachment to your ideas. Attachment to, and people have, we do have all these attachments. Some of you have attachment to being right. Yeah? Getting your way. You know, having things done your way. Yeah. An attachment to your ideas. Your opinions. I'm from one of the most opinionated societies on the planet right now, the United States, I think. Unbelievable opinions. Everybody has an opinion about, and they march it out there. They march it out, they mow over people with their opinions. I've done it myself, okay? So it's something to look at, like this is just an idea, okay? An idea comes from a thought. If you want to analyze your mind, and I love the courses on the mind, comes from a thought. Where does the thought come from? Where does the thought come from?
From your consciousness.
From your consciousness, yep. Okay, and the thought comes from previous thought. Previous thought, previous thought. That comes from your consciousness, just like you said. What's the consciousness made up of? Moments of mind or moments of consciousness. That's all. So you get an idea? For me, it's like the bubble on the surface of the still, clear lake that is like my mind. The bubble on the surface of the still, clear lake. Thought comes up. I have a thought. Then it ripples. Do you ever see that on a lake, how it goes out and it ripples, and it has a reverberation? So if I come out with an idea, and you need to follow my idea, we're going to do this. It can be a very big wave on the surface of the bank of the lake. Okay? So it's one thing to estimate and look and evaluate your idea. I always say, is there benefit? Certainly if you're working on a job and a project, is there benefit? But maybe you're working with a team. So my idea, do I have compassionate wisdom motivating this? Right? Am I considering others with my idea? Is it helpful? Is it going to benefit people? Great. You got a bubble and other people get engaged. And am I listening to their ideas? Right? That's how it can work like that. Otherwise, we just foist the idea on other people. They don't want to do it. I'm not listening to them. You have to do this. I need control. Forcing people. They shut down, and then you have alienation. Nobody's happy. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with an idea. It's just understand. But then if I have big attachment, it has to go this way, and it doesn't. Do you dig your heels in and start resenting everybody in your family, at your home place, at work? Or is there more of a operation of collaboration, right? Where there's more space, more people being happy? Possible?
Possible, but there are power games going on every.
There's power games. So why don't we look at the power games sometimes? So for me, I go back to, I worked in politics in Washington, D.C. So when you talk about power games, some of the most sophisticated I've seen, and some very unsophisticated, but so I wasn't a Buddhist at the time. And then I got into this magazine, a political magazine. I worked in San Francisco, and I was a new Buddhist. Okay, so I was on the management team of maybe, 7 managers, maybe 35 employees or something, or maybe less managers, 6, 7 managers. What I noticed as a new Buddhist, I had my ideas. I had a very clear way I wanted things done or worked in my department, as did the other managers. You're fighting over budgets, fighting over projects, fighting about who's more important, but suddenly I was a new Buddhist. So they weren't Buddhist. Nice people though, nice people. But I was Buddhist, starting to be Buddhist. And so I started to do at meetings where there's power plays, and there were many. And I would get irritated with a couple of these people. And I'd watch the irritation, and then I'd think, and this was what I learned from some of my courses, so if I dig in here and fight, and it came from not what I felt was a good motivation. Then if I went back and looked at the person and said, just as I want to be happy and don't want to suffer, he wants to be happy and doesn't want to suffer. And just as I want to be happy and don't want to suffer, she wants to be happy and doesn't want to suffer. Like suddenly, I was just silently in the meeting, not saying anything, and doing this around the table, particularly with the people really irritating me. Just quietly. And what I noticed is suddenly it became this little common thread because we had something in common now. We both want to be happy. We didn't want to suffer. This is fundamental of what everyone wants, right? Is there anybody here that doesn't want that? Right? Everybody wants that on the planet. Even terrorists, they want to be happy and they don't want to suffer. Just like me, okay? But you have to start to recognize we really do have this common bond. We really do have this. We have a different agenda about how to be happy and not wanting to suffer, but we fundamentally want to be happy and don't want to suffer. That was number one. The second was we have Buddha nature. So we've got a fundamental seed or potential that can ripen into a fully realized being. Now we have that in common. Everyone with a mind has that. So it started just reducing this huge feeling of ego, 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 you want. And I found a way to compromise with these people where I got some of the things I wanted. There were certain things. It doesn't mean you give everything away because you're being a Buddhist and trying to be compassionate. There were things that I weighed my motivation. No, this is really good for the department, but it's also good for the magazine as a whole. That was what I would weigh. And it's also good for all the people in the office. So it wasn't just about me being right. It was, I would always ask, what's the greater benefit? What's the bigger benefit here? Could I compromise in my department where it would still be beneficial and it would lend benefit to all the beings here? Then I would compromise. But it didn't mean I just gave in to everything. So I think then through that there was reasonable dialogue, slowly, but also I couldn't expect them to necessarily be practicing like that. And I let it go sometimes. And so I wasn't torn up in it. I was kind of like, they're not Buddhists. They're good people. I'll work with it. It's not perfect. It's samsara. Why get more upset about it? What's my motivation? Make sense? Possible?
Yes.
Please try your best. You try your best, okay? It's not easy, but we just have to try our best. We're actually out of time, but I wanted to ask if there's questions, and did I cover some of the things that related to love and attachment? And what I would say is if you can always remember the meditation that we did in the beginning, to any time you're stressed in things, you can bring it up as well. Even if I was at one of these meetings and people were irritating me, if I started to come from this place in myself, and maybe I couldn't do it in the meeting, so I did it on my meditation cushion, but the more you can generate love in your being, right, you kind of become that, and you walk around with that. Okay, so we might say on our cushion, we manifest being a yogi or yogini, meaning a meditator, male or female. We want to learn how to meditate. And what you do is it ends up pervading through your everyday life. It doesn't have to leave you, the yogini mind. So I'm at a meeting and there's a power play and this is happening, but I'm there with my compassionate wisdom. And people feel that. People feel that. It doesn't mean I give up on my agenda and what I'm doing and you can have whatever you... No, but everything's motivated from the compassionate wisdom and the heart of loving kindness. Yes?
You mentioned earlier on about if one has a block, that feeling of a knot, which can often result from fear.
Mm-hmm.
So in meditation, how can one deal with that? Because if that is there, it's quite difficult to then concentrate on the feeling of loving compassion.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
the block?
Sometimes it feels, I'll say, people will say to me, I can't come up with the golden light, like there's nothing there. And so I would slowly, and what you could do is put a golden light up here, let that melt down into, and see if it melts, and let it melt the knot that you're feeling. Anything with white light that you want to come through, or any other colored light you want to use, but have it as a radiance that's melting, dissolving. And then we also have, which you've probably heard of here at the center, something called Vajrasattva practice. And there's various practices we do. This one happens to be a very profound purification technique. So it's like that with white light coming down on one of the visualizations, and you can have a constricted knot, and it's just dissolving it and dissolving it. So you could try that a little bit as well. There's, on a higher level, we do Tonglen practice. Have you heard of that? Yeah. Tonglen practice is phenomenal. So you can start with this constricted knot or this block in you that you just feel that, and I just think of all the people around the planet suffering right now. There's so many people challenged right now. You could even think of people local to you, right? So I just think of their suffering, like so much worse than my suffering. Let me breathe in their suffering. It's not going to harm me. It just harms that constricted area. And the constricted area comes from our selfishness, our self-absorption, and then grasping on to a mistaken notion we have of ourselves, kind of the unhealthy parts of the ego, right? So let it dissolve that, right? And then from a place of deeper peace, deeper respect, deeper loving kindness, which does exist in me, breathe that out, let them have that, offer it to them, because it creates a bigger space in your mind. It's just an attitude. It's just an attitude. It doesn't mean you're affecting anything on the planet or that you're taking on any suffering. It's simply your attitude. Could I have a wish to take on others' suffering? Use it to dissolve that conflict, that block like that. You could try that. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Yes?
In samsara, does attachment always tag along with love?
It doesn't tag along with love at all.
Because every relationship that you analyze, there was attachment, whether it's mother and child.
Well, there is, based on our being ordinary living beings. Ordinary is not enlightened. So the ordinary mind is going to have attachment in it, generally. And we have it on gross levels, and then we have it on subtle levels as we are moving up to higher realization. Buddha mind, no attachment. Like that.
So one can endeavor to reduce the level of attachment.
I would say
It will
that's...
always be there.
That's what we're trying for. But as you get to higher levels of realization, basically when you reach nirvana or liberation, you've basically subdued most of the attachment, and maybe just subtle levels of it would remain like that. And it would be nice to be at that level, right? It's something that we're all capable of achieving, everybody in this room. It just takes effort. But we have no problem with effort, right? It's just effort directed maybe not in the best ways, right? Directed onto, right? We make a lot of effort. We make a lot. I mean, Indian society, you're some of the busiest people I know. Indians work harder than, I mean, you're right up there with Americans and the Japanese, and I mean, unbelievable effort people make in this culture. So it's just a matter of check with yourself, am I directing my effort in the most meaningful ways?
One other question, you talked about aversion being one of the poisons. Now, what's the difference between aversion and avoiding unpleasant situations?
So, avoiding unpleasant situations, depending on your motivation and how you're doing it, may inspire some wisdom, right? Wisdom and compassion, where aversion doesn't have any positive aspect to it. Do you know what I'm saying? You might avoid something in a considerate way, and that's very different than just, you know, oh, I hate this person, you know, get me out of here. That's very different. So often your motivation's a big factor in what is motivating me to do something. Helpful? Anyway, I hope there was some help. I want to just ask you to please, again, please test out and these things, please check up on the information that you received this evening. If there is something useful, great. If not, I would just put it to the side. And I do hope it's been helpful, and it's been lovely having all of you here. And I'd like to just dedicate in closing, if there is any benefit that we have accumulated from this time together, may we make it useful in our lives to, first of all, identify and become more aware of the mind of attachment, and to study more and meditate more so we know the antidotes to apply when it's happening on and off the cushion. May it inspire us to move along a path to full awakening. So as fully awakened beings, as Buddhas, which means fully awakened one, we are unlimited in benefiting all other beings. I'd like to dedicate in that way. I'd also like to dedicate to all the people all over the planet suffering from all the acts of war and terrorism. May there be a way that can be quickly subdued. And all those who are ill, may they be healed instantly. And for those who've recently died, like my cousin Eileen Paul, who died this morning, may they be peaceful and have no more suffering and take a good rebirth to benefit all. Janju Zenjo Rinpoche Mage Banam Gegurjik Gebanyam Pame Payang Gane Gandu Belwarsho. So may the mind of bodhicitta that has not been born arise, and that does exist, may it grow and develop. And a long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Gamri Ramwe Korwe Jinkam Der Pendang Dewa Malu Chungwe Ne Chen Rei Zig Wang Denzing Gatso Yi Sharpe Site Badu Tengyurjik. And may all of our teachers live forever in good health. And I'd like to dedicate for the great flourishing of Tushita Delhi. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.